Doug, I'm going to step away for a minute just to remind Morgan, because I think he may have forgotten.
Actually, he's trying to sign on.
Oh, good.
I
Is
have
Melissa
a
still
minute.
downstairs? Oh,
I have a minute till. Do you want to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint?
sure.
And we also have one of our other coworkers here, Tyra.
Time is on.
I see.
Hello,
Tyra.
everybody.
Can you see? Oops, hang on. Let me try that one more time.
Yes. Oh, I could see it.
Hang
Hello.
on. There we go. There. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Yes. Are we ready to get started?
Yeah,
1 o'clock.
Time, should we?
All right. Well, welcome again to another series with me and my coworker, Julie Petty. My name is Cherie Smith. We are with Partners for Inclusive Communities, which is through the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. We are a part of the Safety and Sexual Violence Prevention Project, which is one of the many different projects that we have at Partners. And we are presenting today the Don't Worry, Be Safe training. We've done this training a lot, so we hope you enjoy it. Next slide, please. A couple of housekeeping things. We will be recording this training. We have muted all participants by default, but if you have a question, comment, you can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand. We've been pretty informal during this, so just you can even just unmute yourself and have at it. We're pretty good like that. So next slide.
All right. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about tools for healthy relationships and how to be safe and how to be happy. Next slide, please. So we have to start with what is a relationship? It's a connection or a bond usually between two people. And if we were there in person, I would have to take your hands and put them together and say connection. Connection. So we could have a bond with our pet. I know me and Sharice love our dogs. I love my dog.
She really does.
Yes. So we can also have relationship with ourselves. That might be really important because if you don't love yourself or like yourself, it might be hard to like other people. I think on one of our training series, we talked about reaching my own greatness, where we had to look into the mirror and say what we like about ourselves. And as a person with a disability, that was hard to do in the beginning, but over time, as I became a self-advocate and I learned how to like myself. So, next slide, please. Cherie?
So who do we have relationships with and what relationships are important to you? So like Julie said, we could have a relationship with, it's between two people, but it could be with a group because like we, on the project that we're doing this under, we call ourselves Team Squirrel. And if you ever been to one of our meetings and tried to follow our conversations, you would totally see why we call ourselves Team Squirrel. We are all over the place. And we have a team of 1, 2, 4, 5. And So we have relationships. And so what relationships are important to you? And those relationships,
If you want to unmute, you can.
I think the relationship with your coworkers at work is one of them.
Yep.
it is so important because you spend most of your time with you probably spend more time with your coworkers than you do your own family. So it is vital. That relationship is vital. Someone said, relationship with my children, relationship with my girlfriends, and all of those are important. Relationship with our families. And next slide. So there is a difference between healthy or unhealthy relationships. These relationships sometimes can be good, and some of these relationships that you have can be bad. And a good relationship is considered a healthy relationship. And a not so good relationship is considered unhealthy. And sometimes they can be hard to spot them. And it can be difficult to call a relationship with someone that you really love, like a parent or a sibling, unhealthy, but it is possible. Next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go over some scenarios and talk about some scenarios and y'all can tell us, is it healthy or unhealthy? Julie, do you want me to continue with the scenarios?
Yeah.
So we're going to do the first scenario. It says John has a cell phone with prepaid minutes. Danny, who lives in John's group home, asks him if he can use his cell phone. He tells John it is a very short call. The next time John goes to use his phone, it won't work. John asks a staff member to help him fix his phone. The staff member looks at the phone and tells John he's used up all of his minutes. Is this healthy or is this unhealthy?
Unhealthy.
Unhealthy, overwhelmingly unhealthy. Yes. Unhealthy.
Yep.
It is unhealthy. And Julie, do you have something to add about why you would think this would be unhealthy?
Well, it just not, I mean, John trusted Danny, and they basically lied to him and used all his minutes, So I'm sure John won't let him use his cell phone again. I wouldn't.
Right.
Would you, Shruti?
I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. If me and Julie are friends and I ask her, can I use something of hers, and I don't take care of it and I abuse that, then that is an unhealthy relationship that we have. And Julie might not want to be my friend after that if I continue to abuse her things and her trust.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta trust your gut and walk away from people who are not healthy for you.
That's correct. Next slide. So this is scenario 2. Once a week, Charlie goes grocery shopping with staff Sally. This week, Sally is going to be late. She called Charlie to let him know she will be 30 minutes late. Charlie was happy she called to let him know she was running late. Is this healthy or unhealthy? Now, this is the tricky one. Is this healthy or unhealthy? Healthy. Healthy because she was considerate and called in advance.
Yeah.
Good. Depends on how often this happens.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And that's the tricky part with this one is people are like, well, how often does she do this? It was considerate because she did call and let them know in advance that she was going to be late. And Julie, why would you think this would be healthy or unhealthy? What is your opinion?
Well, I wanted to say when you asked the question earlier, who do we have a relationship with? When we did training in person, we make a list, and people with disabilities always say staff, right? Because
Absolutely.
we have relationship with staff because we need their support. So I think this is healthy because Sally called that if she does it time and time again, I would be talking to somebody. So Sharice, what would you do if you had a staff that was unreliable all the time? What should people do?
You know, this is a huge problem for people with disabilities who rely on staff to offer them support. You know, you definitely, I always tell people when they're getting staff, always have a backup staff and have a backup to the backup. Just being honest, you need a backup plan. You need, and you know, staff members that are there to be your support, you're their employer, and you have to tell them what your expectations is and what you need for support. And so I think it's very important to create those boundaries and set those expectations so that when something happens, they'll know, you know, what you expect.
Yeah, and you're gonna talk about boundaries in a minute, right, Sharice?
I am. I'm going to talk
And
about.
this is where the safety part comes in. I don't want to get on my soapbox, but we see it time and time again where people stay with the same staff who may not be healthy, but they feel like if they get a new one, the new staff could be even worse. Do you agree, Sharice?
Absolutely. You know, people, I completely agree because, you know, it's kind of like the person, the devil, you know, kind of situation. You know, it's better to be with what you know for a person with a disability. It feels safer no matter how bad it is than going out and exploring and trying to find another staff person or another relationship.
Well,
If I may, they also need the factor that if they're going to be 30 minutes late every time, I mean, what if this gentleman has an appointment?
yeah.
Grocery shopping, you know, for some people don't take 30 minutes. I know it takes me about an hour and a half to grocery shop if I go.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be considered other people's plans if it's going to happen all the time.
Right. That's a good point.
That's a good point, Morgan.
Anybody else have a comment before we move on? All right.
And it says, and the person may feel like nobody will believe them if they say the person is 30 minutes late all the time. Yeah, that's a good point because people will say, oh, you're exaggerating, or that's just not true, or it's their word against that staff person. And so that can be a challenge for people with disabilities and people who need support.
It's a big problem we see in the work we do where people, that's why they don't report when they've been hurt or even abused because they feel like people won't believe them. So, I'm sorry, Leticia. did you have a comment?
I thought, did someone have a comment?
I thought somebody did.
Okay, well, next slide.
Inside. Yeah, inside.
Okay. So good and healthy friends, bad and unhealthy friends. And we have a list here that we've created to talk about some of the behaviors and things you can do that may seem healthy or unhealthy. So good, healthy friends talk to you like a person, goes places you like, are dependable, fun to be with, treats you well, listens well, you can trust them. And bad and unhealthy would be like, always takes you places they want to go and they don't want to compromise and take you also places you want to go, get you in trouble and may even get you in jail or make you break the law. Sometimes when people with disabilities have friends, this happens with everybody, not just people with disabilities. You go get in a car with somebody and you think y'all are having a fun time out, and then they get into some trouble and they take you along for the ride without asking. So they don't respect your privacy. They may tell like your secrets or something like that. Hurts your feelings. Anybody that says something or does something that makes you feel bad about yourself, makes fun of you, steals from you, lies to you, or hits you. Do anybody have any other examples of like a good friend or a bad friend?
Sharice, I just wanted to say we got the list from our great South African Joe Millers, who wrote a book called Healthy Relationships and Success Tips for South Africans. So it's a really good book.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Do we have anything, Julie, have anything else to add?
I think the list is pretty good. I just want people to remember to trust their gut, So.
And if something, trust your gut. If something feels bad or feels wrong, it probably is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn it over to Julie. Next slide.
All right. So, don't worry, be safe. We have to think about what makes us feel safe. People with disabilities are isolated. Sometimes, like we've been saying, we have to rely on staff, public transportation, so we need to decide what makes us feel safe. Next slide, please. So safety is a state of being safe, like being protected against physical, financial, emotional, or other harm. And like self-advocacy, you have to practice. It doesn't just, it's not easy to speak up and say, stop. I'm not okay with that, So, like self-advocacy, we have to practice. This is why self-advocacy groups are so important, because we get together with our peers and we can talk about things like this with our peers and get their advice. So, anything else, Reese?
I think it's important to point out what feels safe for Julie might not feel safe for me. And so you have to go with what feels comfortable and what feels good for you. I definitely lean on Julie all the time for support on and ask her opinion on things, but what feels safe to Julie and what is considered safe for Julie is different sometimes, though not very much different for me.
Good point. Next slide, please. So this is called the Ring of Safety, and if you know the late great Dave Hinsberger, he created the Ring of Safety. He interviewed many people with disabilities and said, what would you need to feel safe? And so I'm just gonna go over them. So the ability to non-comply, and that means the ability to say no, or to say stop. I'm not okay with that. This is often hard for people with disabilities because, like we've been talking about, we rely on other people for support. So it's hard to say no sometimes. It takes a lot of practice. And me and my coworker, we practice if we were in person, we would go around the room and ask you to say no. And sometimes people can't even do it in practice. So that is troublesome to me. So, also another way to be safe is to find someone who will listen to you. That's always important. I can always call Sharice, like I did yesterday when my teenager took my car for the first time. Okay. We also need to understand our personal rights. We all have rights. We need to understand that a healthy self-concept and self-confidence. Again, this is where self-advocacy and self-determination can help people with disabilities. And we need to have good allies. We need to have allies who, I had an ally who told me before, it's okay to ask for help, because I used to apologize when I needed help. No, it's okay, everybody needs help. So we need to have a healthy self-confidence. Another part of the Ring of Safety is options for healthy sexuality and sex education. Many times people with disabilities are not taught about sexuality or sex education, and that if we don't know what is not right, we might not be able to say no to someone who is abusing us. So, and then the last one is privacy awareness. We all have the right to privacy. And I don't like it when people, Sharice, have you ever been somewhere where you were trying to use the restroom and it wasn't even big enough for you to shut the door.
All the time, and you have to leave the door open so you can use the bathroom. And let me tell you, that's not only violates your privacy, but it's embarrassing.
It's so, I mean, non-disabled people would never stand for that, you know? So why should we have to? It's ridiculous. So anyway, that is the ring of safety, and it helps keep the abuse out. Next slide, please.
Can I just say something about that?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Cerise.
That's okay. Usually when we're in person and we do this, we usually get a person that's the person who's we're talking about. And we have different people hold these different cards to show a ring of safety.
Yeah.
But we also show a ring of safety where we do another one that is what providers and people think will keep us safe. And we show the difference in what we feel keep us safe and what people on the outside feel keeps us safe.
Yeah, it's actually called the prison of protection. Right, Cerise?
That's right.
People think we need to be protected, and that really makes us more at a higher risk. So instead of protection, we need the ring of safety. Thank you for bringing that up, Cerise. Over to you.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the ring of safety and what that looks like and things that you can use for that, we're going to talk about boundaries. Part of being safe is knowing your boundaries, and boundaries are what's okay with you. Okay, next slide. So what's a boundary? A boundary is a limit or edge that defines you as separate from others. There's two types. There's physical boundaries and there's emotional boundaries. Can somebody put in the chat what they think an emotional boundary or a physical boundary is?
And we usually use the hula hoop, right?
Yeah, we use a hula hoop to go around and show what boundaries are and to show the edge or the limit, and people cannot go past that boundary. Can anybody think of something? Because me and Julie have some good ones, personal boundaries that we've had people go past. Next slide. So physical boundaries. Physical boundaries limits are marked by our skin. I set my physical boundaries by choosing who can touch me, how and when I'm touched, and I get to decide how close I let people come to me. Someone put in the chat, I view boundaries as personal space. It could be physical limits. Absolutely.
So if you don't have a hula hoop, you can put your hands out like this and go around that your personal space that people are not allowed to enter.
You know, I know Julie, me and her often talk about our experiences with people violating our physical boundaries. I use a wheelchair, and I can't tell you the number of times people have just walked up to me and start people I have no idea who they are, and come up and will push my chair and with the ideal of helping me, but they're violating my personal space and they're touching me without asking me or even telling me who they are. And that can be scary for people. annoys me to no end.
And why do people want to give us a hug? Why?
People try to hug us. I'm like, I've never met you, and they just want to hug us, and it's just wrong, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong and weird.
I'll never forget one time, many years ago, me and my coworker Roberta were at a conference, and the woman came up to me and she was like, all excited to see me. And she gave me a big ol' hug. And I was looking at Roberta, I'm like, I had no idea who that woman is. You know, I'm like, help me, please. Anyway.
And I had someone actually pat me on the head,
Oh my goodness.
and it was all bad. It was all bad. So people sometimes
Monica, come on.
I've also seen people walk up to people who use wheelchairs and lean on it or start messing with it. Yes. People use my wheelchair like it's a footrest or like it's a wall. They come and they prop themselves up, and like I'm like, you do see me sitting here, right? And Julie, if you could talk about your experiences with people trying to quote unquote help you, and they grab your arm, and how that causes you to feel unsafe.
Yeah, that can get me off of balance. You know, people try to grab my arm and help me upstairs, or it's not safe. I wanted to say, Sharice, about the about hugging people.
Mhm.
I believe it all started with Special Olympics, and not saying anything bad about Special Olympics. They have good intentions, but at the end of the race, they would have huggers, people who would hug the athletes. And usually people they don't even know. So I don't think they do that anymore. I think they do like a high five or fist bump, but anyway, I think that were some of the myths that people with a hug started.
Right. I'd never heard of that before.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Yeah, they used to get huggers at the end of the race.
I'm sorry, my dog hears something outside. So when y'all get this recording, that's who y'all are here. Do we have anything else, y'all, before we go to the next one? All right, next slide. So what is an emotional boundary? This is a set of feelings and reactions that are only ours. What Julie said of feelings and reactions, what hurts her feelings, what makes her angry, what makes her happy, what makes her feel anxious, what makes her feel unsafe can be completely different from mine. So her reactions and her feelings are completely her own, just like mine are completely my own. How we respond to people based on our experiences and our values, our goals, and what we care about, and how we let others treat us emotionally. You know, everybody has different life experiences. They were raised differently. They had different upbringings. They had different values and goals. So what might be something that makes me feel unsafe or upset or insecure will be totally different from yours. Can somebody give Julie, do you have something to say about an emotional boundary?
Yeah, I have lots of examples, Cherise. And you know, if we were in person, we would give people sticky notes to write their emotional background, and then we would put them on the hook. Because the difference between emotional and physical boundaries is you can't see them, right?
That's
So you
right.
have to tell people. So
Absolutely. And so, like for me, and an emotional boundary would be talking about my health to someone who doesn't know me or who I've not given you permission. That to me is an emotional boundary.
Yeah.
And
don't, you could say don't share my information, right?
that's right. Don't share my information. Don't tell people about my business without consulting me. If someone yells at me, it violates an emotional boundary. I don't like being yelled at. I don't like people screaming at me. And so that can be upsetting. Does
I don't
anybody
like
else?
it. Sorry.
And an emotional boundary for me is when people come up to me and they talk really, really slow. Like I don't understand them or something like that. That's an emotional boundary because people see my physical disability and then they react that way, and that violates an emotional boundary for me.
That's what I was gonna say. Should we don't talk to me like a baby. You know?
Right.
I also don't like the R word. If people say the R word around me, I have calmed down over the years. I don't get as much. Anyway, I tell them very nicely, please don't say the R word around me. There's so many emotional boundaries. Does anybody have one they want to share?
I have one, actually.
Oh, yay.
Yes. One of my personal boundaries is my space. When I need time to either cool off or something upsets me, I've had it where people are just quick to try to go, what's wrong? And it's like, stay back. I'm dealing with this. That's my boundary. I need you to let me deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get anybody else involved at the same time. If it's my problem, then yeah, that's a boundary for me.
That's a great example, Morgan. People, if you get upset, people need to know to give
Yeah.
you space, right?
It's like, give me space. Yeah. Yep. And I am big, Julie, on that R word. If people use it in my presence, I get very angry.
You know, and I think that's a good point, Morgan, and Julie, about the R word, because we talked about ableism last week, and that violates a lot of boundaries. Ableism violates a lot of boundaries for people with disabilities.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Morgan.
Joe says, finishing my sentences for me when I stutter is a big boundary for me. Yes, and more, yes.
That's a good one.
This is
And
a really good one.
people who use communication devices, Cherise, I have seen people be disrespectful, and I have the patience to let them finish typing or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I knew this gentleman who used one, and his first sentence out of his device was, "Please allow me to complete what I'm gonna say and respect what I'm gonna say. That's what he said every time. He says, it's gonna take me a minute. Just respect it. And then he would go in and go there. And if you tried to interrupt him, the look he would give you could just freeze the ground.
That's a good example because he told you his boundary before he started talking or typing, right? So,
Yes.
anybody else have emotional boundary?
All right, next slide, if nobody has anything else.
This is me.
Yeah,
So let's talk about a safety plan. Now, we're not gonna go into full detail. This is just a start. So a safety plan is a plan that you have in your head, that you have down on paper, that is made to keep you safe and as safe as possible. And like Shabby says, what is safe for her might be different for me. So safety plans can be made very simple with little information, or they can be more complex. That means they can be more detailed. It depends on the situation you might find yourself in with someone who might be abusing you. No one should hurt you or scare you. So I have met many people before that I don't get a good vibe from. I can tell by the way they treat me, you know, that they might not be someone I'm gonna hang around. So who can help you make a safety plan? Your friends, your family, or your support people. You could even do it on a people first call if you wanted to. But definitely it's gotta be someone you trust. So, anything else, Sharice?
no, I think that's great. You know, use the resources that you have. What resources Julie have, I don't, and vice versa. So yeah.
All right, next slide, please. So I know this is a lot of information, and Doug had a copy and Liz had a copy of this. So you can start with 3 people you trust and their phone number. I know the 3 people that I trust and who I would put down. If you have a pet, you don't want to leave it. If you have to like get away from somebody who is not nice to you at your house, you might want to take your pet with you. If you need to leave, you need to have a plan and pack the things like your identification. If you need money, if you need extra keys, copies of important documents such as birth certificates, different medications or certificates, glasses or contacts, whatever you need to help you get around or communicate, clothes and personal items, personal phone book or important numbers. Now we all usually have cell phones and have all our numbers. So you want to take a chart, maybe a charger. But this is a good list. And it's really important to know if you have to go somewhere to feel safe, you might want to take these items with you. So, next slide.
So your rights, you have the right to be safe, you have the right to speak out, and you have the right to get help. You have the right to say, if something's not right, you have a right to say it. As you can tell me and Julie are extremely shy and we have a hard time speaking out. But getting help, it's like Julie was saying earlier, how she had a hard time getting help. You can't get out of a situation if you don't ask for help, or you can't fix a problem if you don't ask for help. So that's very important. Next slide.
Before we go over this, Sharice, let's see if anybody has any questions or comments.
Do anybody have anything they want to say?
I am very passionate about this topic of being safe because I feel people with disabilities, we are at a higher risk of being hurt or abused or not being safe. So it's okay to find somebody you trust to talk about it, because I know it happens on the daily to people with disabilities, because I know we know the statistics, right, Sharice?
That's right. And right now, me and Julie are in really good places. We both feel safe, but we still need to have this plan in place. So just in case something ever is to happen, we'll have it already ready, and we're not creating the plan as we go along.
Yeah.
Because when you're unsafe, you sometimes forget things.
Especially I take medication. I need to have extra meds in case something happens.
Yeah.
Okay, Sharice.
Okay, so be happy, be healthy, and be safe. Think of this as like the top 10 list on the Late Show that they used to have. These are the top 10 things on the list you need to be happy, healthy, and safe. Being respectful. In order to get respect, you have to give respect. Be responsible. You have to take responsibility for your actions, and you can only be responsible for your actions, not someone else's.
Yep.
Be happy. Just go out, have a good time, be happy, but set boundaries. Set boundaries with yourself and with those that you choose to have in your presence.
Yep.
Learn to say no to what feels bad. Practice, like Julie said, get in the mirror and practice saying no. Just try it. And I was watching this show once, and they were talking about things you're afraid to try. And this girl was like, well, I never have been able to send back food that I didn't like because I don't like conflict, but practice saying no. No is not a bad word. Be honest. If you feel unsafe or if you feel unhappy, be honest with yourself and deal with it. Be yourself. There's only one you. There's only one me, thank God. So you have to be yourself. The golden rule, the first thing we're taught, treat others as you want to be treated. Julie's been saying this all day. Trust your gut feeling.
I think that's my favorite thing to tell people.
Yeah, and trust me, your gut feeling is probably right, I've never not trusted my gut and been wrong. So share information and talk to others. Talk to others who have disabilities. Talk with your friends, your non-disabled friends, and share that information so that they can get the safety plan as well. There are people that's not at this training that won't have the safety plan. Share this safety plan with them. And it says, give respect and get respect and share the tools.
So now that you know all the information, like Cherie said, please go share it with others. So they can also be safe and be happy. So,
And they'll also know what you expect from them to be safe.
yeah. It's all about communication, I guess. Right?
That's right. You like, I guess, I know. Next slide.
We got that early, Cherie.
So do we have any questions, any comments? We want to hear it all. We got about 10 more minutes and we can use that for Q&A or just conversations. I think this is a really great topic and we want to hear from you.
Sometimes it's hard to talk about, you know? So,
Yeah, I agree. Some people don't know what it is to feel safe. They just know when it feels bad.
right.
And that makes sense. If it feels bad, it's probably unsafe.
In person, when we make a list of what is healthy and what is not healthy, it's easier to come up sometime with what is not healthy than what is healthy, you know?
Anybody? Okay.
I really want to read that, Cherie.
I really appreciate taking your time to talk to us. It has been fun for me. I've really enjoyed it.
And we
you for-
can't tell, we don't have a problem talk. We don't have a problem talking.
Yeah, we don't have, Julie's a little shy, but you know, we appreciate y'all so much for having us. Doug says, what do you say to self-advocates who feel trapped either by their family or their staff situation where they don't have anyone to talk to? Julie?
That's a hard one, Cherie.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really hard one because when self-advocates feel trapped and their only interaction is probably their family or their staff, I would suggest getting involved in a self-advocacy group.
That's a good one.
In these new COVID times, people are, everything's online now. You know, if you have access to Facebook, there are Facebook self-advocacy groups. Some of my greatest friends that I have, I've met through Facebook who I've never seen before, but we've been connecting on groups and things. And so that's been, thank you so much for coming, Elizabeth. So that's what I would suggest is probably finding yourself a self-advocacy group. I mean, because all groups are meeting online now. And in doing that would be helpful. And if you could find other self-advocates who are maybe in the same boat as you, you can support each other. But that's a hard one, especially if your family and your staff is all you're surrounded by.
I'm sorry, Morgan, did you have a comment?
I did. I was just being polite and letting Cherise finish because I didn't want to interject.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Sitting in my lap.
and I love that top 10 and I want a copy of it. One of the things I also feel, and this could also be applied to, as we talked about with the whole DSP part, you know, when you're with your client, that you need to understand, they need to respect their personal space and their privacy and things like that. I mean, also, there's also peer pressure. That's another thing with emotional boundaries. If you're being peer pressure, it's just best to back off and trust your gut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we don't want to forget that we have an evaluation I'm sorry, please don't forget. Don't forget we have an evaluation, so please fill it out. We haven't, so we want to get as many people as possible to fill that out because it'll help us. Me and Julie, when we do other trainings, it'll see if we're doing a good job, if we need to fix something, yeah, you know, more interaction, whatever it is you guys want to do. So please do the do that with the link that is in the chat for our evaluation.
Sharice, I
help
wanted to make a comment about Doug's question.
Okay.
I don't know if I shared my story when I was there in person a couple years ago, but I have family members that are not supportive, and I've had to just set a boundary and like stay away from them. And it's hard to do, but sometimes you have to do that with family, you know?
That's right. My mother was not supportive of me moving out and being on my own. She didn't like it. She didn't want no part of it. She didn't think I think she thought I could do it, but she was wanting to keep me safe in her way.
But
And I had to set a boundary, and then I had to set a boundary and tell her, you can't come over every day, and you can't, I gave you that key for emergencies. You just can't be in my house when I get home making lunch. But that's a whole nother soapbox I got going on. It's something me and my therapist are working out.
yeah.
Me and my unhealthy relationship with my mother.
Do we have a poll today?
I do not have a poll. We have the, oh, there it is.
There you go. Thank you, Doug.
Thanks,
You're right.
Doug.
You rock. It takes the village.
Yes, it does.
Doug and Liz, you are good allies, and thank you again for having us do the series.
We just
Yeah.
appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, we thought it was gonna be one training, and it's turned into a great thing, a great partnership.
Yep.
Now, back to, and while people are answering, we have people who will call the office, and the only time they can get on, they have any interaction is if they join us on one of our meetings, but then they'll call later and say, hey, you know, I've got a roommate that I didn't want, and I can't do anything about it, and I've complained and nobody will do anything, or their family will call us. We'll have people call and say, well, now my child's about to turn 18, I need to get guardianship. And we try and get them to inform them that there's many better alternatives to guardianship.
Yep.
But sometimes the self-advocate is already, you know, they want to do something and it's like, well, I can't. Why? Well, because my mom, my brother, my cousin, so-and-so's my guardian, and I can't do anything about it. So that's why I didn't know if you had any other insights, or, I mean, we do try and refer people, but I didn't, you know, so we provide them with as many answers. I was just asking if you had any other suggestions for trying to help people who feel trapped by, you know, my company is my agency is my guardian, and they told me I have to have this roommate whether I like them or not, because that just fits into their financial situation.
Doug, let me ask you this. Do you talk about, when people ask about guardianship, do you talk about supportive decision making?
Yes, the West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council that supports us has they had a gentleman named Don Hoyle from, I believe he's from Michigan, come and do a talk about that. And so they have a video on their website that we give to people and tell them that they need to watch this video. It's about 2 hours, and he talks about an hour. He talks for an hour on why guardianship is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then he explains why it's not a good idea in reality, and then shows some great examples of people who live in a group home because that's the best for them that they want to be in, and how they are living their own life because that's what they decided. And so I'm going to take your PowerPoint down for just a moment, and this is what we show people. Hang on, let me get to my share screen.
Well,
There.
Doug, I think
This is what we
Doug,
share. This is what we show people rethinking guardianship, and then there's a whole
Yeah.
video. So yes, that's exactly what we try and do, because we don't like people just instantly going, well, my child has a disability and therefore we must become their guardian.
Mhm.
Because we know that's not
I
true.
think Doug, that's a whole nother topic, a whole nother training, because it really takes a different way of thinking, you know? It's a paradigm shift, is what I call it.
Yes.
Um,
You do a training
anyway.
on that?
I don't have one, but anyway.
Oh, hang on.
Roberta-
Roberta says, in my experience, self-advocacy is a process. And if it gets to the process of talking about guardianship, that usually means that they have not had self-advocacy throughout their life. Well, that's
Yeah.
very good. We actually have had people call and say, look, I'm 85 and I can't lift my 60-year-old son out of bed anymore to put them in their wheelchair to take care of them. What am I supposed to do with them now? Well, it's a little bit late to start thinking about that now, because there isn't any state program in West Virginia, and I don't know if any other states. So that's why this education about that kind of stuff is vital. So
Yeah,
you're exactly
very-
right, Julie.
Yeah, very bad.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about giving people information about supportive living and things like that, it would help having people with disabilities give them that information. Because Julie can say, I know this person can do it because I've done it. With supports, I know this person can do it because I've done it. And that sometimes is helpful. That's why independent living centers have the structure that they have. It's because they have people with disabilities talking about independence.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got 2 o'clock, so you all made it. Thank you all again very much. I didn't turn my camera on because I'm sitting home in my sweatpants and my t-shirt because I'm at my house.
It's
But I
okay.
seriously wanted to watch this because we do get a lot of calls about, healthy relationships is one of our #1 requests for things for trainings. And so that's why I was excited to see this on the list.
All right. Thank you, West Virginia.
Thank you all.
for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. We'll see y'all.